And I think we should be okay. I am Drew Badger, the founder of EnglishAnyone.com and the English Fluency Guide. Welcome to another live video here on YouTube. As I mentioned in the previous few videos, I think I have a book I'll be releasing soon. I'm going to be releasing it in pieces because I really want to get feedback and release, even if it's not complete yet, release it in pieces so people can start using these ideas and change the way they learn and get fluent faster. Nice to see people there. Glad to see YouTube is working here. All right, so Rola is there. Arturo, nice to see you there. Raul. So today I wanted to talk about another one of the pieces of the book, and this is a little bit later when I start talking about the specific method and how people can actually learn. But I wanted to talk about, magnetic vocabulary. So yes, nice to see everybody out there. Hopefully people are doing well. As usual, I will talk about more of a lesson portion at the beginning of the video. So if you just want to stay for that, that's fine. And then I will answer more questions from people if they have them. And I will go back and check chat. But let's get rolling. If you do have any questions, let me know. And if they are pertinent to what I'm discussing, then I'll probably answer them at that moment, or I will go back and answer them later. But do leave any questions you have. So I wanted to start this video talking about magnetic vocabulary because of two things, or actually I'll just start with two stories that are true, and I thought these were just very interesting. I believe I may have told these before, either just in videos or in maybe in emails to subscribers. But the first one was many years ago. I tried some honey for the first time. So this is, where was this? This was back in Chicago when I was a young kid. I was having some pancakes with some friends of mine for breakfast, and I saw people putting honey on their pancakes, and I thought, oh, usually I put syrup on, but I figured I would try it and see how it tasted. And it was one of these, maybe you've seen it, it's like a little bear. It looks like a little plastic bear. I'm not going to draw it very well as usual, but it has the lid on top, and I don't know, it's kind of like a little, looks like a little bear thing, and it just kind of looks like that, but that's the little container of honey. So I try this, I put it on my pancakes, and it tasted nasty. I couldn't, I immediately ran to the toilet and threw up. I couldn't believe it. I said, why are people putting this on their pancakes? And that moment, we say that scarred me, like it left like a scar on my face. It left a scar on my soul. And for many years after that, I did not touch honey at all. If people said, oh, you want to try this honey thing? I said, no, absolutely not. I hate honey. And it's because, again, this first experience of honey with this little bear thing just, again, scarred me. But many years later, when I was living in Kyoto, Japan, a friend of mine, he said, I have to go over to this place. We were out somewhere. He said, I have to go get some of this honey that I really like. And I said, really? You like honey? And he said, yeah, this is like, it's like real good, all natural honey. You know, like the guy has different kind of varieties depending on the flower that the bees are coming from. And so he was telling me this whole story about how the honey was amazing. And I said, all right, well, you know, maybe you like it, you enjoy the honey. But he got some and he said, here, just try a little bit of it. And I said, all right, you know, I'll give the honey a try. And it was amazing. And I was very surprised that, wow, like all honey is not the same. And so I'm trying this honey, and I really enjoyed it, and I became a fan after that. And I enjoy good honey now. I don't really enjoy this stuff from the bear, but I do like, especially raw honey or just very good quality honey. One more story very quickly. I was visiting my younger sister in San Francisco, California, and she wanted to take me to this ice cream place. And I said, okay, you know, I like ice cream. That's not even like honey. I actually enjoy all kinds of ice cream. I don't know if I've had bad ice cream. I don't know. Maybe I have. But she took me to this place, and they had a whole story up on the wall about how the ice cream was made and how they're trying to get more ice crystals, I think. I don't remember exactly what it was or even the name of this ice cream place. But they made the ice cream for you there. And I tried and I said, wow, this is some of the best ice cream I've ever had. And of course, it tells you that there is actually kind of higher level or lower level quality of various things, and vocabulary can work the same way. And so I wanted to begin just talking about those stories because often what I see from learners is a vocabulary that actually could be very large, but it's not very magnetic. And so when I'm talking about magnetic vocabulary, what I mean is, we'll get this bear out of here. So when I'm speaking right now, even just talking for this video, I'm able to communicate fluently because my vocabulary is magnetic. And that means that almost like little blocks, the connections between these blocks is extremely strong. And so I can, for example, let's say I start using a sentence or I start saying something, and immediately it's like I've talked about this in previous videos where I'm laying down the track as I'm moving the train forward. And so this is how it works. I don't know, maybe 5 sentences in the future, but immediately I have many different options of what I could say because the vocabulary itself is so magnetic. So, for example, I might know a word like run, and I could have many different ways that I might use this. I might have like a phrasal verb like run into someone or run over or run after something. Or I might have a collocation. So a collocation is, and this is a very important thing for non-natives to learn. These are, again, this same idea being magnetic where words are typically found together in particular ways. So we might have run a business or run into, like again, the phrasal verb example, like I might be running from one person to another or running into, or I might be maybe like running a car engine, something like that. And so often when we look at words, the more time you spend with vocabulary, the more magnetic your vocabulary becomes. And so this means not only do you know the vocabulary very well, but you know how that vocabulary connects to other things. So I know if I start using something, I say this word, I immediately know some other words that could come after this. And this is often how natives are able to complete each other's sentences. So I might say something and then the other person knows what I'm going to say next because of what I just said. All right. So people aren't just speaking randomly, and we're able to really like charge the vocabulary to make it very strong by knowing that vocabulary really well and also knowing the other words that might go along with it. So this is what I mean by magnetic vocabulary. So let me just give you another quick example. A couple of days ago, my older daughter, Aria, was asking me, what does the word blend mean? So she heard this, this was, I think, in a music class. So I think she's in a chorus group, so trying to sing. So she is in elementary school with other little kids who are starting to just learn how to sing, and their music teacher or the chorus teacher was talking about blending. So she just says, what does the word blend mean? Because I think they had, so she is in a Japanese elementary school, but they still use some English vocabulary like this, even if it's like, if it has a Japanese pronunciation like burendo or something like that. But in that case, she asked me, what does blend mean? Now, a non-native might get a translation of this word, or maybe they just get a definition of the word, but I'm trying to make the word magnetic for her, so to help her understand how to use that word very well, how she can see maybe more connections and how to really understand the word. We want to take a bit more time. And I know this, it sounds like a tricky thing for people where they don't want to spend more time really understanding vocabulary. They think it's going to take a longer time to learn, or it will take longer to become fluent, but the opposite is true. So it might start even like right now, I'm giving you a longer explanation about something. But the more you do this, the faster that process accelerates and you start understanding new things very easily. I'll give you a story about that in just a minute. But about this blend example, so I asked her where she heard that, what was the context of that, and that way I can help her connect, why we're talking about this. So she gave me the music context, and that was just one use of it. So she was talking about how we need to blend our sounds. The teacher was talking about blending voices, like a harmony. So we might have someone singing duh and another person singing duh, some kind of sounds like that, and we're trying to blend those things together. And so I said, look, that's exactly how it works. And just like when we're at home, let's say, mom makes, she puts some fruit juice in the little blender over here. So we put all that and mix it up. This is called a blender for that reason. Because we're taking these things, we put some banana or apple or other things like that in here, and we mix it all up together, we blend it together. We could also do the same thing with colors. And so she's got lots of examples or experience with this. So what do we do if we've got, for example, I've got some color right here. If we take blue and we take red also, what do we get when we blend those two colors together? We can mix them. I don't really want to mess these markers up, but you probably know the answer. We get purple. So we're blending the primary colors red and blue together to make purple. And so it was just spending a little bit of time with her to really help her understand what that meant, but I was giving her these aha moments, and she's thinking, okay, so that's why we call this a blender. So we can blend sounds, for example. We could blend ideas. We could blend colors. We could blend different things. We could blend, various things like that. But again, the point is to spend a little bit of time so we really understand the word blend well, and we even know other words that can connect with it. Because remember, the point is not to memorize a bunch of these individual words or even individual phrases. We really want to see how things connect in sentences, okay? So we want to understand, we want to make the vocabulary really magnetic, and that will help us be able to use things and continue speaking without getting stuck, okay? So if you're in conversations and you find that I can't quite connect some vocabulary to other things, and I'm just not feeling very sure about that, or you have to hesitate and pause and think about what you want to say or maybe translate, it's usually because you know a lot of vocabulary, but it's not very magnetic. You just don't know that vocabulary well enough that it's automatically making these connections for you. So with me, I kind of have a general idea of what I want to say, but I'm not thinking about it beforehand. I'm not planning it out really. Even today, I just have a general idea of what I'd like to talk about, but I try not to plan too much in advance, because part of this way that I teach, or these videos that I make, it's showing you what it's like to communicate fluently. So I don't have a script that I'm reading. I'm just talking with you right now to show how this works. And another point to understand here is that when we learn words like this, another thing we do is we might learn other ways of expressing the same thing. Because typically what natives are doing, and this is another big difference between non-native learners and native speakers, is native speakers are really thinking about what is the job to be done? What is the thing I'm trying to express, rather than what is the perfect or correct thing that I have to say in this situation. So let's say a native speaker, for example, forgets the word blend. Maybe that happens sometimes. I forget words, or I can't think of the best way to express something, but I call this moving like water, where we just easily switch to something else. And so a native speaker not only knows the word, they might know an additional way or many additional ways to express that, like we could have mix. So I could mix some sounds or ideas or something like that. It's another very simple way of continuing to speak by using a different way of expressing this, okay? So again, the reason I'm bringing up this idea of magnetic vocabulary, another reason beyond this, my daughter having this situation with my daughter. And also I had a learner contact me. So this is a member of Fluent for Life, and she told me really an interesting story. So she was sharing this with my team. We get lots of good mails from people. I should probably share more of these, but I just thought I would tell this one because it's connected to this story. But she was going through our Visual Guide to Phrasal Verbs program, and she was really studying it well. So reviewing it lots of times, asking lots of good questions, and really trying to understand things very well. Basically, making her vocabulary magnetic. So seeing how words are used, hearing how they're used in sentences, and getting lots of good examples of that. And so something very interesting happened after she had gone through the program. So she told us recently she was talking with, I believe, a teacher. So she is a student at a university, and her teacher was actually using phrasal verbs that were not covered in the program. And but she understood them all. So again, like another great benefit of this idea of having magnetic vocabulary is that you can often fill in the gaps where a person, maybe you learn, like I think we covered this in the last video, but you might have, for example, a word like run, and I might, maybe I teach you, for example, like run into, but then maybe you hear like run over in a different context. And now you can see, oh, like because you run into or run at or run a couple of different examples, you really understand what they mean. When you hear something new, it becomes a lot clearer for you, even if you don't have you didn't practice it or learn it beforehand. So this is how you can start understanding a lot more things in context. And that's another example of how this accelerates over time. So it's not like you're just spending a long time trying to remember things. And I want to make it clear that the point is not to remember every use or try to study everything about it. We're looking for a comfortable middle ground where instead of the typical way where you know just maybe a translation or a definition of something, we actually know the thing quite well and we feel certain about it. So I was trying to give my daughter enough examples until she felt certain about the word. And if I can connect it with other things, like here is a physical thing called a blender, now she understands what that means. And we can talk about blending, ing, like blending different things like different foods or different sounds or different peoples or whatever. So even my daughter is a blend of her two parents, so myself and my wife. So she is a blend of that. All right. So again, it might sound like I'm spending more time doing things, or even this learner in Fluent for Life who was going through that program that really took time to do this. The more magnetic you can make your vocabulary, the more you will use it naturally, because you will automatically see how these connections are made, and you will also start understanding new things you hear from context much more easily, because you're seeing how other people are making all these connections. It's the connections that allow you to speak. It's not the individual vocabulary. It's the connections between these things, because if you don't know how to put them together, then you can't speak. I might understand a lot, and as I talked about in my video last week, another thing that I talk about in the book is explaining how you don't need certainty to understand, but you do need certainty to speak. So if you might know some things, like maybe you understand vocabulary pretty well. We actually had another member of Fluent for Life that wrote us specifically talking about this idea, how now it makes a lot of sense that why you can understand a lot but still have trouble speaking. So the point is, if you know a word, when I say it, you can probably understand. But you might struggle to use it yourself if you don't really feel confident about how to use it, or the pronunciation, or how it connects to other words. That's the whole idea of blending and making sure that we make our vocabulary magnetic. All right. All right, I'll go back and check chat, but again, look at that. I think we got only 20 minutes into the video. Fantastic. All right, well, we'll see if anybody has any questions about this. It really is a very simple idea, though, where the better you know the vocabulary, it's not how much you know, it's how well you know the vocabulary. So if you don't know the vocabulary very well, you can still understand a lot, but you'll have more trouble speaking. All right, let me go back and see if anybody has any questions, but that is today's lesson. So hopefully that makes sense for people. It should be pretty easy, but we'll go back just make sure I didn't miss anybody, and maybe this will be an incredibly short video. We'll see. Zayuan, morning from China. Nice to see you there. Bridget from, let's see. Oh, I didn't see where. I don't know actually where Bridget is from, but nice to see you again. Hi there, teacher Drew. And Enriquez is, where are you from? I am from Chicago in the United States. I now live in Nagasaki, Japan. Gina says hello. Julio says hey. Teacher Tuck says good morning. Maria says boa noite. I'm guessing that's good evening. Hicham from Morocco, and Tom, nice to see you there. We miss you. Well, I'm right here. Here you are. And there you go. Learn and Grow says, is your English native? What do you think? Is it native? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. You can decide for yourself, but I'm pretty sure it is. And even if I'm not native, I'm still a pretty good speaker. If I were not native, and again, another thing I'll point out about this, because people often talk about like being a native, or do you have native level English? It's a way of describing that, like how people speak. So I'm not a native speaker. I mean, I am. We talk like that, like I am a native speaker, but I'm only a native speaker because of how I learned the language. It's not because I was born in a particular place, it's just how I learned. So when new people are trying to learn a language, if we can help them really understand the language well, then we can really get them fluent much faster. It doesn't matter where they live, or even if they have practice partners with them that they can talk with every day. The point is really to get certainty. And so when my daughter was getting this explanation from me, I wasn't trying to spend a lot of time talking with her about it. I just got her question. She said, Dad, what does blend mean? And of course, I've become a teacher immediately, and I start explaining this and that and all these connections to help her see that. And once she feels like, okay, I can see that in her face, now I got it, then she feels a lot more confident. I know we can move on to something else. And I kind of lock that in there. And often I might go back and repeat a word later. I'll throw it out there like, hey, here's another example of blend or something. I just use it casually in a conversation just to make sure she still understands. But most of the time, she works just fine at being able to do that. So she's improving very well. Both of my daughters are learning to speak English and Japanese, but I have to work harder to help them learn English because most of their day is spent in Japan and speaking Japanese rather than English. So I only have a little bit of time that I can work with them to teach them English. All right, Namal says, hi teacher, good morning from Sri Lanka. Let's see, it's 6:25 in India. Tom says almost 10 o'clock. Hello, I'm Haney. My great teacher, nice to see you again. Fabio says, just now I enter. Josette says, my best greetings to Eunice. Hi, hello, folks. Greetings, Drew. This is Eunice from Morocco, too. Look at that. Yeah, we got quite a few fans in Morocco. It's interesting why some countries are represented a lot more than others. It's interesting. Hitchem says, is there another word like blend? Blonde. Well, they sound different, but blonde it's like you're talking about blonde, like the hair color, like that. They sound similar, but they mean something completely different. Also, if you're curious, if you want to know about words that sound similar, or you're looking to test, understand pronunciation, you should get Frederick. You can click on the link in the description below this video. So it will give you, like, you can look at the difference between a word like leak, and a word like leak, like L-E-E-K versus L-E-A-K. Or you can hear all kinds of other words. There are over 2,000 words and sentences in the app, but this is a great way to compare and actually learn what these things mean. But you'll see interesting differences between those. So if you don't have the app already, you can click on the link in the description below this video to get it. All right, let's see. Yeliga says, good morning from Italy. Julian says, hi, teacher and people here. I am Julian from Colombia. Happy practicing English here. Gun Guru, that's an interesting name. Sometimes I can speak very well, and other times my mind can't produce any ideas. Yeah, I talk about this in the book as well, how fluency or communication is often particular. So you can feel certain about some things, but not feel certain about others. And even native speakers like myself, we will have this same issue. So I can talk maybe about some things well, but about other things maybe not so well. And that could be because I just don't know much about that topic. Like I often give the example in these videos about fixing cars because I don't know anything about fixing cars. But I know a lot about other things like, maybe gardening or even teaching for that matter. So I can explain a lot about education and learning because I know a lot about that. So I've spent a lot of time thinking about it and teaching people and learning about it and all kinds of things like that. So you'll notice, like you could even talk about my ability in certain topics is more magnetic than others. So I much more readily get ideas about how to express things, or I can continue speaking much more easily about some things rather than others. So often, if you could, for example, if your problem is really more of how can I use some vocabulary in some ways but not others, or I can talk about some things but not others. If it's not just like a random confidence issue and it's more about just not feeling very certain about the vocabulary, then just spend more time with that vocabulary. The good news, and this is also something I talk about in the book, is that you don't need to spend a lot of time speaking to develop the ability to communicate fluently. I know this sounds a little bit weird or even backwards, but really the basic idea is that certainty should come first. And if you can become certain about your vocabulary, if you feel certain and confident before you speak, then when you do have conversations, it's much easier, for you to express yourself. And so that's the same thing I'm doing here. I feel confident about what I want to say, and maybe in the middle of saying something, I might switch to a different way of expressing it or use different words or whatever. But if you have sometimes when you do feel confident or you can speak well, and other times when you don't, try to look at what that might be, what might be the reason for that, and why you might have I don't know, like if it's just a random confidence thing, or if it's actually about the vocabulary. Because typically these are specific problems you can solve, like not knowing the vocabulary to talk about something. But again, you can spend a lot of time just watching other people speak and really learn a lot about how to use the language from other people. That's really how natives are doing it. All right, Rolla says, why I'm always feel that I have to listen English just to keep me able to communicate with other. What do you mean, Rolla? I'm always feel that I have to listen English just to keep me able to communicate with other. Well, all right, so there's some basic errors in your writing that tell me that you might be trying to either communicate at a level that's higher than what you can express, like grammatically, but also that you should probably be spending more time just listening to more basic things. Often there's a disconnect, especially for us adults. So like let's say our communication level is here, but we want to be able to talk about things up at this level. And that's normal, like especially like let's say you have a PhD, so you have a doctorate degree in something, but then you go to a different country and you can't even talk about basic things in that language. It's really frustrating. So a lot of people, they try to learn more of this, but the smarter approach is actually to spend time with things and make sure you really know them. And you know when your vocabulary is magnetic because you're speaking correctly, you know the right things, and they feel correct. It's really a feeling you get when you know something is working correctly rather than you trying to think about specific rules when you speak. So if I were to just go back and correct some of this, for example, why am I always, or why do I always feel that I have to listen to English just to keep, or just to be able to communicate with other people. So something like that. There could be different ways you correct that depending on your exact meaning. But again, there are some basic errors, and this is a problem I see with lots of learners where, again, often smart people, maybe they have even high level or difficult jobs, but their communication ability is much weaker. And so instead of trying to learn more about the difficult things, try to go for the basic ones. And so you don't have to spend a lot of time talking to do this, but you should spend time just watching other people and making sure you're correct at that level. So if I'm watching people talking in a TV drama or something, and I can't communicate in that same way, then either I can continue watching more and more, or I should really be looking at smaller pieces. So I had a question, I think. Maybe this was an email I got. We get lots of comments and mails, but this was one about, it was a tricky, longer sentence. And I think the question was asking, what was it exactly? I don't remember the specific example, but basically it was a longer sentence where the learner was saying, well, how can I understand this? And we basically replied, well, why are you trying to focus on this longer sentence? And if you encounter things like that, it probably means you're trying to interact with language it's like higher than your level. And you know it's higher than your level because you get a sentence and you don't understand anything that it means. What you really should be doing is trying to get slight improvement in your English as you slowly expand, or not necessarily slower, but you're expanding at a comfortable rate where you understand most of the things that you're learning, and so any new information is easy to understand. So if you have a long sentence and you don't understand the pieces of it, or maybe there's some difficult slang or whatever, you can try to isolate the particular words or phrases that you don't understand. So maybe you understand some things but not others. Focus on that particular phrase. But again, a lot of this is people trying to get to a higher level than what they should be doing, and it's just going to make the process take longer because you will be more frustrated, you will be demoralized, you will be thinking, why is it taking so long to get fluent? And that's because typically people are trying to get to this higher level stuff rather than doing this lower stuff down here. So me, I used to think the same thing. Well, I was like, okay, I'm a smart guy, I guess, smart enough. I went to college, or whatever, but I want to try to have conversations as quickly as possible. I want to speak impressively and communicate with people and express my ideas and all that, but it didn't work. And I could continue to really push forward on this, but the strategy was really bad. Instead, it was much better for me to really learn how to communicate at a basic level, but again, making that vocabulary very magnetic. So I'm not trying to just learn a whole bunch of difficult vocabulary or have a lot of vocabulary, have a large vocabulary. I really just want to know things very well. And as I expand my vocabulary, I want to make sure new things are also easy to understand. Does that make sense? So again, if you have basic errors, like basic grammatical errors in what you're trying to say, then make it easy for yourself. Go back to more just basic or simple things, like even watching programs for children or reading children's books. I talk about this in my book as well, how it's a very simple strategy to go through and really make sure you're feeling certain about the foundation. So all of these little blocks here, these pieces, you should be certain about how to use all those things. You should know you're going to use them correctly, pronounce them correctly, you're using them in the right way. If you feel that way when you speak, that's when they flow because they're automatic. I mean, that's the whole point of having a magnetic vocabulary. All right, let's see what else we got here. Tuck says, if you come across the words, you don't know exactly the meaning, do you go to dictionary or do you get more examples? It depends, like in the example from my daughter here. So she didn't know a word and she was just asking me, what does the word mean? And I'm trying to get her to think more, okay, where did you hear that? And trying to connect that with some kind of context. Often learners, they hear something and then they just focus on the vocabulary itself rather than trying to think about the context they heard that in. So try to think about that first. The point is, you could go to a dictionary very quickly, but give your brain a little bit of time, a little bit of challenge to try to solve that thing. If you can give yourself a little bit of time, you might be able to figure it out. Now, if you really can't, if it's just impossible to understand, then sure, go to the dictionary. If you can, use an English to English dictionary. Just look it up, like what does this word mean, and get an English example of it. But yeah, try to give yourself a little bit more time and train yourself to think about these connections rather than trying to, okay, how can I just get the definition of something as quickly as possible? Ronald says Brazil. Fabio says mix and blend. Saludos desde Charlotte. Look at that. Somebody else from the United States, I'm guessing. Hi, nice to meet you, Drew. Good morning. Jawad says thanks from another person from Morocco. Julian says, I'm sure that the problem with English isn't speaking, but understanding. When a native speaker talks to you, no one talks about what they don't understand. Speaking is a consequence of understanding. Yes, you've got that correct. And Julian has been enjoying the channel, learning along with everybody here for quite a while. But yeah, that's the idea. So we want to make sure, not just understanding, and I want to make it clear, I spent a lot of time trying to explain to people about how there are different kinds of understanding. Just like at the beginning of this video, I'm talking about there are different kinds of honey, there are different kinds of ice cream, and there are different kinds of vocabulary. So you might have vocabulary that you know a little bit, but you're unsure about certain things, and so you can understand when other people are talking, but you don't feel certain about that. So you should feel certain about the vocabulary when you are trying to speak, yes. And Annette, nice to see you there. Nils from Wisconsin. And Julio says, teacher, do you have a WhatsApp channel where we can practice? Almost every video I get people asking me about speaking practice, and I have to remind people, you don't need to practice speaking in order to improve. If you're learning anything at all from these videos that I'm making, it's proving that you're just improving by listening to what I'm saying. We're not having a conversation right now. You're just listening to me. So rather than thinking about you having a conversation, and I talk about this in the book as well, the point really is, how can we get to certainty as quickly as possible? And all the things that I talk about in these videos or in the book, these are all things that I do personally. So it's very easy for me to talk about them. But for example, let's say I only have 15 minutes to learn. So I've got 15 minutes to learn. What could I do? I could try to speak. Now, am I really doing this easily? Like, okay, let's say we connect on WhatsApp, we're going to have a conversation or whatever. What are we really going to do? Like, maybe you will say a few things, I will say a few things, but did that really help you a lot? Maybe it did, maybe you learned something, maybe not. So for me, if I only have 15 minutes to do something, and I mean, it's nice if I could talk with people, but it's less efficient for trying to improve rather than me watching maybe 5 or like maybe 3 short YouTube clips talking about something. So I could watch, let's say, a video, or I could listen to something where I have different examples of people using vocabulary that I want to learn. So I'm being strategic about how I do this. I'm focusing on something, getting a variety of examples about that, and I can control this situation very easily. So I can't control this one. Maybe I don't know where to find people to speak with. I don't really know what the conversation will be about. I can't control what the other person will say. But for this is very easy to control. I can know exactly where something is, easily find the information, and then review it very easily as well. So again, when people are asking like, hey, like, let's meet and talk, like, just try to think about what you would be doing during that time. I don't try to do this to learn Japanese, and I'm still a good speaker of Japanese. And that's because I spend more time listening to people and trying to get to certainty rather than me trying to speak. Okay, so this is like the big thing I talk about, and I will have the first few chapters of the book ready for release very soon. Almost done, probably next week. I know I said last week, maybe this week, but we had like a website issue, so we had to fix some things. But hopefully next week I should have that. So if you're interested in that and you're on the email list, you will get a notification for that. But again, the speaking part. The reason people think they need to do this, and this is another thing I talk about in the book, but the reason people think they need to speak is because they think that practice makes perfect. You probably heard this expression before, practice makes perfect. So it seems reasonable. It seems like the right thing to do. Okay, practice makes perfect. If I want to become good at drawing, I should draw a lot. If I want to be good at playing the guitar, I should practice the guitar a lot. But the difference with speaking is that each one of those situations is unique. It's unpredictable. We don't know what other people are going to say. So it's much better for me to spend my time preparing with lots of examples of other people speaking. All right, it's a really important point if you want to become a confident speaker, if you want to feel prepared in different situations, you really need to be ready for that. You need to be ready whenever you need to speak. And again, when you have that magnetic vocabulary, other people might use words that you're unfamiliar with, or maybe you decide to, instead of say this word, you use that word, but it's much easier to communicate because you feel much more certain and confident, okay? So you could look for people to speak with, but I don't recommend you do that because it's just a very inefficient, especially if you look at what you're actually doing with your time. So if you have a stopwatch, set your stopwatch and just see what happens. Like, okay, I talked for 10 minutes or 20 minutes or even an hour with someone. Do you feel more fluent? Now, usually what happens even when we speak, if you're speaking with someone who is, number one, a good teacher, number two, a native speaker, or at least at a better level than you, that's where you're really going to improve. But most of that improvement will come from what that person says to you, not what you say. All right, so the improvement, again, like you might think it sounds reasonable, I should practice speaking because, of course, speaking practice gets you fluent, right? But wait a minute, in a real conversation, we don't know what other people are going to say. So it's not like practicing for an instrument or swinging a golf club or something like that. It doesn't work that way. We actually have to be prepared for the unpredictable, the unexpected, the surprises that we encounter in real communication, okay? So that's why I don't have like a speaking, group or anything like that, because it's although many people think they need it, it's less useful, and a lot of people who are getting that, even people who do get speaking opportunities, are still not confident speakers. And the reason is they're just not certain about what they want to say. That's it. All right. So that's why I didn't want to write a book, honestly. But I thought I have to explain all of this to people in steps so they make sure they understand. All right. So I really look forward to releasing it. It's a different kind of book than most people are probably used to, but I think people will enjoy it. All right, let's see what else we got here. Julio says, all right, we got that one already. Oscar says, greetings from Panama. Pedro says, finally, I get you on live. Well, welcome to the party, Pedro. I work a lot. It's always difficult to be here live, but I'd like to say you helped me a lot. Glad to hear it. It's my pleasure. What about listening? You have to talk about it. What about listening? What about listening? You're listening to me right now. It's a good idea. Remember, listening is just one way that you might get some input that helps you understand the language. But ultimately, certainty is what you're after. So you could get that by listening or reading or watching or playing or tasting or all kinds of things that can help you understand language. The point is not to pick a particular method. It's like all of those things could work. It's just, are those things giving you certainty? So even you could have one person that's listening, but they listen to things that really help them understand. Another person is just listening to random content, and it's slowly building their passive vocabulary, but they don't really feel more confident about speaking. So again, that's the part of the point here is like, and that's another reason I'm writing the book, to really help people understand these nuances about learning, where instead of just thinking, okay, I need to listen more, or I need to write more, or I need to do whatever. It's just, are you feeling certain about what you want to say? That's the whole idea. So Pedro again, I do not know English like I want yet, but I can work, study, etc. with that, and you help a lot. Thank you very much, Drew. It's my pleasure. Emilio says, I am from Panama as well. Look at that. Oh, and from Brazil. So Silence Foot, that's an interesting name. Hello to another person from Morocco. Look at that. Tomorrow, final exam on English material. All right, good luck out there. Vincent says, Drew, I have been your long life learner. You would say a lifelong learner. And I realize that your lessons emphasize about 7 fluency habits like certainty and listening more. Yeah, so if you watch the main video, the welcome video on my YouTube channel, I talk a little bit more about that. So these are specific habits that people develop as they're learning to speak. But I'm trying to make it very simple. I don't really talk much about that in my book because I already have guides for each of those things already. But that explains why you can be strong in one skill but not others. So some people are very good at listening, or maybe their pronunciation is good, but they have confidence issues or something like that. The problem that most people have, specifically trying to improve particular skills, is that they like doing the thing that's comfortable for them. So if you like studying vocabulary, you will continue to study more vocabulary, but you might not feel confident about speaking, and so you don't want to speak more, and that's an obvious kind of thing. But the easy thing is, like, if you can improve your weaker communication skills, so the things that maybe you don't feel so confident about, then you will communicate better. And so you can do that very easily, even without speaking, just by feeling a lot more confident and certain. So you spend more time with the vocabulary, you take more time really understanding things like I did here with this example of the word blend, or other things that I do in various videos. But that's the whole idea. Let's see. Oscar says it refers to engaging in genuine communication using the language. I don't know what that's referring to. And then again, I have been to a live video in a long... All right, you haven't been to one. I just heard the word book. Is it ready? Can I order it? It should be. What we're going to do is release it in steps. The first reason is because I don't want to wait until it's all done to release it, because I know people will be... If people are struggling to speak right now, they can already begin improving even with the first few chapters of the book. So I think the completed book will probably have 8 chapters. The first 3, along with the introduction, are complete, and then I will release those probably next week. The other reason is because I want to get feedback from learners. So I want to know if I release something, if I release the whole book and people don't understand it, or some things are difficult to, whatever, I made it confusing, then I have to go back and fix those things. So I want to release it in steps, and that way the people who get those chapters, they can do that. And I will make a video probably next week, assuming it's available then. But if you're on my email list, then you will also get a reminder about that. But again, the first couple of chapters will be ready, and it will probably be like $5, I think. So it's super, super cheap, and people can go with the kind of the flow of it. You can ask questions in the group that we have for the book, and let me know if there are things you understand. If you think the book is awesome and it's helped you already, fantastic. But that will be coming very soon. But I'm glad to hear you're excited to read it. All right. And Bridget says, oh, for the UK. All right. Merton says, hi, thanks for the lessons. I want to take online lessons. Can you recommend where to look? Well, depending on what your level is, you can click on the links in the description below this video. You can learn more about Frederick. So that's not only for beginners, but depending on how your level is, it takes you from learning the sounds of the language all the way up to more difficult sounds and sentences. And then Fluent for Life is really showing you how to develop this magnetic vocabulary by understanding the language really well, with lots of examples from native speakers. So if you're interested in doing that, you can click on the links in the description below the video. Smart One says, hi there, Julian again. I believe it's not good to speak English with someone who has the same low level as you, because a blind person can't lead another blind person. Yes. So I agree with that. And that's why I talked about this in a podcast I made years ago about practicing a sport with people who are better than you, because that's what's going to improve your level. So if I only play with people at the same level or who might even be worse, and especially with language learners, you don't necessarily need a teacher to speak with, but you should be just trying to get lots of good examples of how natives speak. But the important thing here is, because the examples are the thing that really help you develop fluency, you don't actually need the person physically there to speak with. So you can get examples from me and improve without actually saying anything. And you can get examples from lots of people, just even right here on YouTube. It's really easy to do. All right, Oscar again, listening activities can be categorized as either productive or receptive. Okay, that's interesting. I mean, I could, I don't know. I believe you, I guess. Listening activities can be categorized as either productive or receptive. All right, well, I guess it depends on what you mean by those words, but I would just categorize it by more like either you're developing certainty or you're not developing certainty. And for the purposes of learners, that's really the important thing to focus on. So do I understand things better by listening or whatever activity I'm doing? That's the real question. Let's see. A dumb boy from eastern part of China. Oh, no, don't say that. Taco says, it's really hard for me to get certainty of abstract things, concepts or emotions, and something like that, how to feel certainties. Well, it would, I mean, even when people are talking abstractly about things, there's usually some kind of context for that. So if you can give me some specific examples, I can give you better advice. But try to think about it more like if I'm having a conversation about emotions, or I'm having a conversation about philosophy or ideas like justice or something like that, there are usually a lot of concrete examples that make things easier to understand. And often, so I was asking my wife about this today. So I saw recently the Japanese kanji, so the written character for Tsuyu, which is the rainy season that we're in right now. And I noticed that. I said, oh, that's interesting. It's the kanji for like plum and rain. Why is that? And I asked my wife, and she was like, I don't know. And so it's like here we begin a conversation about something that could be abstract, or I mean, it could have like an interesting origin, like why is it like that? And part of especially adults, when they learn things, we like knowing why something is, because it's more memorable, but also it's just, like we always like knowing why. Little kids ask why as well, but they typically don't ask why we use like go. Like, why do we use the word go rather than some other sound or something like that? So as they get older, they begin asking questions about that, and adults especially ask lots of questions about why things work. So if you're uncertain about particular things like that, go deeper into it. That's how you make that magnetic vocabulary. So this doesn't just work for physical things you can see. It works really with anything. It's more about spending time. So here, or not here, but in the example I gave before about blending different sounds together, that's an abstract idea in the way that blending colors is a physical idea. And so depending on the examples, usually we can get often a physical example or something that can help you understand it. So spend a little bit more time, try to get more examples, look at like the word origins of things, and that will help you understand them better. But again, the time you spend with vocabulary, we're not trying to just understand things a little bit. We really want to get to that certainty. And so you're uncertain if you're asking questions like, all right, I'm uncertain about the use of it. Could I use it in this situation or not that situation? These are questions that you can answer. So it's not just a general fear of speaking or a lack of understanding in general. It's specific doubts about vocabulary or grammar or whatever. But most of the time you can solve those pretty easily. You could ask Google or ChatGPT or, a teacher if you have one, just look it up online or even search it in a video. But in general, if you're looking more for how to talk about particular topics, just watch people talking about that. Go to YouTube and look up how do people talk about things when they're angry. Like you can listen to people talking about their day. Like I'm frustrated about my day, or I'm angry about this, and you can hear people talking about that, or the kind of vocabulary they use when they're expressing certain emotions. It's that kind of thing, but it's pretty easy to get that information. Mohammed asks, I am currently working. I could easily understand some of my coworkers in terms of communication. However, my superior is very hard to get. What do I suggest? I don't know what you mean. What, like, you can understand the coworkers, but you can't understand your boss or something, your supervisor. You could ask him or her, whatever the person is. But I would spend more time listening to them, ask them more questions, and try to get more examples. So listen to them even talking to other people rather than them only talking to you. But if you can get more examples, you could even tell them that. Just say, I don't know the specific relationship or what kind of person they are, but if you ask, like, hey, I'd like to understand you better. Or you could phrase it like, even just asking them to speak a bit more slowly or something like that maybe would help you to understand them. So again, I don't know, it's kind of a delicate thing. I don't know much about the person or the situation, so I don't want to give you a lot of advice about that. But if they are harder to understand, spend more time trying to listen to them. And over time, you will get examples of that. So if they are talking to someone else, listen to that conversation. All right, let's see. Nehosi, I'm probably pronouncing that badly. I've watched a lot of your videos. Now I can understand 90% of what you are saying without looking at the subtitle. That's great. But when watching movies, I find it still really challenging to comprehend. Yes, and that's partly because I'm speaking a different kind of English than what you hear in movies and TV shows. So you really need to get examples also of natives just talking. It could be in movies or real conversation examples that you find right here on YouTube, but it's a different kind of English. So instead of thinking like a learner and thinking more, okay, I'm just trying to understand a teacher, which is great. We want to get you to that next level. So that's exactly why we organize like Fluent for Life the way we do. So this is how we're taking you from understanding English teachers like me to understanding people who can express the language really well. Annette says, how do I get on the list? If you go to EnglishAnyone.com, if you're not on it already, just subscribe for one of our guides on there. Take the quiz if you like on EnglishAnyone.com, and or if you're like on the blog or whatever, you will find more examples of pretty much anything you get on. Yeah, I mean, we have a couple of different things you can just like free guides you can opt in for, but also I will make the announcement here on the YouTube channel when it's ready. Miguel says, Professor, could you rent me a room in your house so I can go to the World Cup next year in your country? Is the World Cup in Japan? I didn't know that. That's interesting. But yeah, also, I don't know if it's in Nagasaki. I don't think it is. So I don't know if staying in my house would help you very much. But let's see. The English learner's pain points. We cannot understand the words completely. So that is why we cannot output information fluently. Yes, that's it exactly. And so, when I talk about people understanding, there are different levels of understanding. And so some people can understand well enough to follow people, to watch movies and TV shows even. But when it's their turn to speak, they struggle. And so what I discovered for myself, I used to just keep learning more vocabulary. I thought the reason I couldn't speak was because I didn't know enough. The problem is I didn't actually know the vocabulary I already had very well. So it's again why I'm talking about magnetic vocabulary in the book, talking about it here in this video, is because if you can feel confident and certain about your vocabulary, and you don't have to try to memorize every use of the word. Like I was teaching the word blend to my daughter, I wasn't giving her every example of that, just enough examples that she felt certain about what it meant. and that she would feel confident using the word. That's the test. So she doesn't need to know every example of what something means. We're not trying to be like AI or robots or computers or whatever, where we need all of this input. We're just trying to get enough information to make sure we understand. I'll give you one last piece of this, but this is another example I have in the book where I'm talking about triangulation. So when we're thinking about looking at something, I think I also gave this example in the previous video last week. But when we look at something, for example, with one eye, so here's my one eye and I'm looking at something, I'm looking at an object. Let's say I'm looking at this thing here. So I'm looking down at this thing. You can close your eye or cover your eye, do the same thing where you are, and look around at something where you are, in your room, in your house, or outside, wherever you are. When you look at it with one eye, you can see generally where it is, but you don't know exactly. So I can tell there's something here, but I mean, it could be a big thing really far away, or it could be a small thing close up. I don't really know for sure. And so we need the other eye to triangulate. We're creating a triangle here to triangulate where something is. And so now I can see, oh, it's got depth to it. I can see where it is in 3D space. That's why we have two eyes. That's why we have two ears as well. If you only have one ear, it's more difficult to tell where sound is coming from, okay? So we only need one mouth. We don't need two mouths, but we need two eyes because that's how we can see where things are. That's how we get depth perception. And so vocabulary is working in the same way, where now when I have two eyes, I don't need 10 eyes to get certainty. I only need 2 to know where something is. That's like the magic number. That's why we don't have 3 eyes or 5 eyes or whatever. That's just enough. That's all we need. And so the same thing with vocabulary. When my daughter gives me a question like, what does the word blend mean? Then I need to help her triangulate that thing to understand it well, to get more examples. So I don't just repeat the word or give her a definition of it. I really want to give her a range of examples like blending colors or blending food or blending music or blending voices or whatever. And so with all of those, it's kind of like looking at things with a variety of eyes, or touching things, or getting them in a variety of ways. So even I might try a meal. Like I look at some kind of food on a plate, I can look at it, I can smell it, I can taste it, and all of these things are really helping me understand what something means. So when I hear about like a chicken sandwich, then I'm not just, I could even listen to the sandwich, I guess, but I'm trying to taste it and smell it, and all of these things are coming together to help me really understand that thing. So it's not just understanding, it's certainty, especially when you need to speak. You don't need to feel certain when you listen. Most of the time you can understand things even in like 80%, 90%. You don't know every word. It's okay. You don't know the grammar, whatever, but you can understand a lot. But when you try to speak, if you don't have certainty, you will feel stuck. All right. So that's what I talk about in the book. I explain exactly how the process works, why it works like that. And then for people who already know, they're like, yes, Drew, I get it. Now I understand. Like that's where I lead them on to Frederick. So you can start getting that certainty yourself by comparing different sounds, or you go on to Fluent for Life and start learning the same way natives are getting information, but it's just much more efficient. Right, Tsubasa, Ohio, Drew Sensei, nice to see you there with the DAP, good work. And Dento says, trying to explain the markers example used in Japanese to illustrate a family member, why need to listen to you, but I couldn't find it. Oh, you're trying the marker example. Were you asking me a question last week about that? I don't remember if that was you or somebody else, but I'll give you that example again very quickly. Excuse me, I'm almost done here, but we'll give this last thing a very simple example about helping you understand a language in a language you're learning. And the point is to give you certainty and help you feel confident that you understand things. And a big part of that is when you come to the conclusion yourself, or you discover something yourself rather than a teacher just telling you what something means. So here's a very quick lesson in Japanese for absolute beginners. Maka. Maka, maka, ao, aoi maka, aka, akai maka, kuroi maka, kuroi maka, hoko no kuro a, ao, aoi maka, akai maka, kuroi maka, kore wa maka, kore, それはマーカね。これはマーカ。All right, so if I just give you some simple lesson in Japanese like that, that will help you understand Japanese in Japanese. And you might not remember everything I told you, which is fine. The point is not to remember everything, but you're slowly starting to think, oh, I understand what he means by that. I'm helping you triangulate what things mean all in the language. All right, so this is what I call certainty first language learning. Instead of you trying to repeat after me, I don't say blue marker, aoi maka. I help you understand that thing within the language itself. If you can do that, you will feel certain and confident, and then you will speak. All right, it will feel amazing because you will think, wow, I actually understand how the language works. I feel certain about it. It's not that I just recognize it or feel a little bit like I know it. I feel certain. Okay, and that confidence is what allows you to speak. All right, so hopefully Dentor, if that makes, or maybe Dentor Solutions is like the name of, I don't know, a company or something. But Ned says, thank you, Drew, for the information. Yeah, it's my pleasure. I look forward to you reading the book and getting some feedback from you about it. Sergio says, hi, teacher. Sir, what do you think? How many words are enough for communication in daily life? It depends on what you talk about in your daily life. So again, I try not to focus on how many words you need to know. It's more what vocabulary is important and how well do you know that vocabulary. So for me, maybe I don't speak, Japanese very much in my day. Maybe I go to a grocery store and I talk a little bit with the cashier at the grocery store just to have a little bit of small talk or something. But in general, it depends on your life. Like some people need to use a lot of English, but it could be typically English for work or for particular situations. So you don't worry about trying to know everything or even trying to have a particular size or number. It's more about what vocabulary is needed for that situation. So think about that, and that's the better thing to focus on. But this is also why, like Fluent for Life, we organize it by topic. So if you need to talk about family or work or all the various things that you might talk about, you can pick particular topics and learn about that. So you learn about the specific things you need to know. And again, the point is to make that vocabulary magnetic. You really want to make sure you understand it very well, and that's what's going to allow you to speak. All right, well, look at that. I think we finished the video for today. Fantastic. But hopefully people are excited about the book. I've been working on it for, well, I guess I could say I've been writing it for over a year, like writing different drafts, and then I stop and then completely rewrite the book. But really it's been 20 years of trying to think about the best way to explain all this stuff, because I've been teaching the same way for 20 years, but I haven't been able to express exactly how I'm doing it all in one place. And so that's the purpose of the book. So I really want to make sure, like anybody who comes to me asking me questions, like all these questions I get, I'll just say, read this. and that will explain everything to you. All right, well, I look forward to releasing it. If you would like to get started with the method as soon as possible and you're not already learning with me, you can click on the links in the description, especially get Frederick if you have not gotten that already. But this is like Dentor was asking about explaining to a family member how to learn that way. Just give them Frederick and let them play with the app, and they will start understanding. It's like the same kind of thing with the marker example, but you teach yourself the language all in English. And so especially if you have children and you're trying to help them learn the language, that's how you can do it. All right. Have a fantastic day. I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.